What's up, YouTube? This is Kiyan Sobhani. God bless you guys all for sitting through this nightmare international break with so many injuries, so much bad news. Even the Argentina-Brazil game, which I was really looking forward to last night, was an absolute gong show for obvious reasons. But we're almost there. Club football is on the horizon. And today I'm releasing a quick clip from this week's patron-only Churros y Tácticas podcast, where Diego and I spent an entire episode answering questions from patrons. We do that every single week over on patreon.com/churros y tácticas. Link is in the show notes. And we love it because it's honestly one of the most fun things I do every single week because the questions are so great and they always stir the pot. And Diego and I always have to kind of get into debate mode, Kool-Aid versus Madridista style. And it was a ton of fun. So right before we jumped into questions, we spoke about the injuries of Gavi and Vinicius and Camavinga, etc., and whether or not there's too much football contributing to this and making it worse. So this segment is from basically just that part where before we jump into questions, we talk about the international break injuries. And I'm releasing it here for you guys. If you want access to the full episode, just click the link in the show notes. Thank you for watching, and let's get to it.
This has been another nightmarish FIFA or international break where the famous FIFA virus has affected both teams, both Real Madrid and Barça, in the interest of our listeners, and certainly more teams as well. Massive blow, though, in particular for Barça, of course, losing our Energizer Bunny, the guy that never stops the fight and gives it his all. Gavi will not just miss the season, the rest of the season. He'll also be out for the Euro Cup and the Olympic Games. So it's a dreadful one. Let's hope not for a speedy recovery, but for a healthy one. Because, of course, these kind of injuries to the knee ligaments are very sensitive. Rarely do players come back fully as they were before. So, but let's try to be optimistic. Of course, also added to that, the injuries to, was it Kiyan? Camavinga and Tchouaméni, right?
Camavinga, Tchouaméni was a little bit older. Vinicius, during the international break, he'll be out for at least 2 months.
Right.
Sucks, man. Yeah, everything sucks.
It's awful. What a way to like restart La Liga at the end of the week, knowing that all this talent just went to waste in these absolutely, at least in Spain's games, absolutely pointless games.
Yeah,
where nothing was at stake, nothing was at play.
That's probably the most frustrating part. Is that nothing, literally nothing was at stake, and I don't know, man. Like it's just. I've mentioned this a few times before, but like it kind of just sucks waking up every day and, not knowing who's healthy, who's not. Just kind of knowing that you're just going to wake up to some bad news about somebody. It's Russian roulette. And I don't know, man, like on one hand, it's, a lot of debate has been spurred about too many games and maybe it's time. Like maybe we use this as a catalyst to spur change of reducing the games, reducing the amount of football. Opta put out that stat that Gavi has played 92% of available minutes, I think it was. Jeez. And it's the same thing that happened to Pedri, right? Pedri, for the longest time, it was like we praised him for playing every second. And I wonder if we should have just stopped to think should we be, instead of applauding this, maybe we should say, hey, maybe this is a bad sign. Maybe we should not put this load on a kid's shoulders. And again, I'm not a professional, Diego. I don't know the science. I don't really understand. I have a physiotherapist friend who says, look what happened to Gavi. It more could have had to do with fluke. Because his specific injury is not necessarily related to playing too much and putting strain on it. That specific injury may be down to a freak horror bad luck thing. And I don't know. But either way, I do know this, that if he wasn't on the field in a meaningless game, that wouldn't have, it would have reduced the chances of that happening to him in that moment.
Yeah.
So there's also that.
So there
side
are
of it.
actually images, Kiyan, that came out where Gavi was signaling in the warm up that he was like kind of feeling some like molestias, as they say here, like some niggling, discomfort.
Yeah.
And you even see the physio like spraying that exact area with whatever magical fairy dust spray that they spray in those moments.
Yeah.
And then they're like, God, you're fine. You're good.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. I didn't know that. Like, that should be, even if there's a little chance. I mean, I don't know. Like, so if what was he signaling to? His thigh, you said?
No. So that area in the back of
the same area.
Yes, in that area. Yeah.
Even that notion alone should be enough.
Yeah.
To not risk him, right? I don't understand. So it's just really frustrating. So we have too many games, and again, the biggest barrier is what? It's that FIFA don't care about players' health because of the money. There's too much money. So if you reduce games, you lose money. So you have to compensate somehow if you're going to reduce games by bringing in more money to compensate for it. So you have to either charge more or really buckle down and charge more for streaming services, which no one wants, or I don't know. And it's going the opposite direction. The next Club World Cup is 32 teams instead of like just the champion of each continent, right? It's a whole tournament. It sucks. So I don't know.
It's crazy. And then at the same time, though, there's the debate going on that, for example, and again, I'm going to shoehorn basketball into this conversation, how the stars of the NBA often will sit out meaningless, entre comillas, regular season games to kind of, do this load management. We all know that, of course, the NBA schedule is insane. What is it, 82 games throughout the entire country. And that takes a toll. And then you have these older guard players or ex-players kind of criticize this load management, and players feel pressured that they need to play all the games. And I definitely, again, I'm obviously goes without saying that I'm far from being the expert or have any kind of weight in this debate, but it would seem logical that there is such a thing as playing too much. And it does seem like we are going the wrong direction. You mentioned the Club World Cup being expanded now to 32 teams. However, and that's why I kind of sometimes I just don't know on which side I fall. I certainly think that there needs to be a kind of a common sense implemented in these kind of situations, like a Gavi situation, or just with your best players. Like if the game is absolutely meaningless, let the players play that have that you call up that have the least amount of minutes. Let them enjoy playing for the Spanish national team and get some minutes, some meaningful minutes in their cases. However, having said that, in a club's case, sometimes I wonder, but we've always kind of, at least since I clocked in, since I plugged in, tuned into football, it's always been kind of 2 games a week, hasn't it? I mean, that sort of seems reasonable. I mean, if with 2 games a week, players are talking about too many games, I get, again, the friendlies, and the summer commitments with your national teams and stuff. Maybe in the end, it's all too much. But I would think that those 2 games a week for, how long is it? 9 months, 9.5 months would be okay for top athletes that only need to dedicate their time to that.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I think the NBA's problem is more so that they have a situation where players don't care about the regular season. So they'll just rest players left, right, and center, and then their whole purpose is like, I want to be healthy for the playoffs because that's when it matters. I don't care if I'm the 7th seed or 6th seed or the 2nd seed or 3rd seed. I just want to get there healthy because once I'm in, and I can, do my thing. So the NBA is trying to figure out how to combat that to make the stakes higher in the regular season. I think the other thing the NBA doesn't have is that they don't really have international breaks in between all this madness, right? And even like if there is a basketball World Cup or qualifying, like think about it. Like I mentioned this on the Managing Madrid podcast last week because we were talking about it. Like we watched the basketball World Cup over the summer. It was pretty fun. But at what point, like, did we even tune into the World Cup qualifiers? Did we even know they happened? Like we just like all of a sudden it was like, oh, the World Cup is here. Somehow these teams got here. No one watched the qualifying. The Stars don't even play the qualifying games because it's like going on at these weird times. So they're not even going. And then the ones who get to the World Cup, I think eventually, you know, it's a watered down version. It's not like the A team, not for the USA anyway. For other teams, it might be different. But again, like Jokic and Murray weren't playing the World Cup this summer.
Yeah.
But like if it was just 2 games a week, like you said, Diego, I think that would be fine. But like, you know, it's not entirely true what you say about like since I've been watching football, because the Spanish Super Cup used to be 2 games on Spanish soil, not 4 games in the middle of the season in Saudi Arabia.
It's true.
That Carabao Cup didn't exist when you started watching football. And the Club World Cup...
Wasn't it just called like the Coca-Cola Cup or something? It keeps changing its name as well.
I don't know. Maybe. But there's Premier League has 2 cups.
Premier League is a fuckload of competition. That's definitely true. I think, and they play. You know, they don't have the Christmas break. They play on Boxing Day and whatnot. It's like the biggest game of the season almost. I think if any league or country has a reason for outcry, it would probably be the Premier League. I don't know if in Spain, despite, I mean, you bring up a good point with the Super Cup. You know, that you know, you have to travel and you're playing potentially 2 more games. But still, I don't know, man. But then again, like I am absolutely nobody in this conversation. We would need to talk to a specialist, you know, somebody knows the physical beating that these players endure and go through on a daily or weekly basis to say, like, you know what, this is absurd. We are asking way too much from athletes nowadays. And if we want to see these star players play at their highest, you know, execute the game at their highest ability, then they need to start dosificándose. They need to start playing less games. Then I would be all for it. It just sometimes feels like I'm like, well, yeah. I don't know. I look at it from a perspective for, you know, the everyday man or most of us that have to get up, clock in, and do our time every single day. To these players who do the same, but yeah. I mean, we see how these practices are during the week. It's pretty mild. I mean, they chuckle around, they run around the pitch a little bit, do some drills, but it's not. It doesn't seem excessive. Yeah, I hate to be that guy, but you understand where I'm going with this?
I do. I also think there is the valid argument of perspective that some people throw out and like, look, man, I don't work any less, and I'm not getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars per week, per year, or whatever, per X amount of years. Like, these are first world problems, right? You know, you look about what's happening. I actually thought this image entered my head when I saw the video of Gavi entering the locker room, the Barca locker room, and they were all giving him hugs and stuff. And I was like, to be quite honest, Diego, I felt heartbroken for Gavi throughout this whole thing. I was like, this is awful, man. Poor kid. I mean, we know how much he loves playing. You could see the pain in his face, both physically and mentally. I felt really bad for him. Then I watched the video of him going to the locker room. I was like, that's a nice moment. And I thought, like, you know what? This kid's problem is that he's filthy rich. And although it sucks what he's going through, you think about, like, what is actually happening in the world. And how many, like, horrifying images you're seeing right now. Absolutely. You're like, well, it puts into perspective, like, there's, like, different levels of problems, right?
Of course.
And then a lot of people will say, like, look, man, these guys should just play and entertain us because they're getting paid more than any of us will ever see in a lifetime. But I do think there's, like, you know, if you were to look at it in a vacuum, like, Cruz is very vocal. He's, like, the leader in this, like, front, like, on his podcast, where he says, like, FIFA think we're just, like, shiny objects. Like, they just move us around. so they can fill their pockets. They don't like care to talk about us. Like, hey, like what do we want to do? So I think that's a valid point too. When you look at people like Pedri, Gavi, and Vinny getting injured, and you look about how much mileage, I feel like Vinicius, it was inevitable. Like, this guy plays nonstop. He's almost at the top of the minute list for Real Madrid and Brazil. There was a situation last season where he played for Brazil in Brazil, and then 24 hours later was playing for Real Madrid. Like, that makes no sense. Like, at some point we have to like think, like, is this really a good idea? I don't think it is. And so I felt like the Vinicius thing was inevitable too, and I was kind of dreading the day it happened. And he's already had 2 this season, so I don't really know what it means. I just feel like it sucks, Diego. Like, not like as much as it is first world problems. Like, you and I both want to wake up every day and feel like we have our full squad available to watch the best players.
We're nonstop talking about it. Exactly.
Yeah, we want to see these guys play. And so for them to be able to play consistently on a regular basis, it probably means more load management, I think. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. No, for sure. And listen, and the, the comparison to real world problems, is of course undeniable, and wholeheartly agree with it. In Gavi's case, the only thing that I would say is that he's never gonna be sure, or not until he comes back, of course, and gets match fit again and starts training and doing all the groundwork to come back at the same level. Hopefully, is that's not guaranteed, and that's not sure. And you go over the list of players that have suffered these types of injuries. It's similar to ripping your Achilles heel in basketball. Rarely do you see players come back and play at that same level. So that's worrisome, and that has to, of course, well, hopefully not, but I'm sure that must be on his mind and play a factor in his, his mental state as he faces this long road of rehabilitation and getting back at some point, hopefully, to his old self. We'll see. Xavi did it, and he went on to be very successful.
Xavi did what, sorry?
Well, Xavi suffered a similar injury.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And around the same timing, actually. And then he came back, and he actually played the Euro Cup and won that with Spain. So that was kind of Xavi's return from that injury. But
I mean, this guy still has such a long career ahead of him. That's the other thing.